Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani, jathare shayanam. Yah samsare, bahudustare, kripaya pare, pahi murare. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani, jathare shayanam. Iha samsare, bahudustare, kripaya pare, pahi murare. Punaha api. So you join those two words, punaha and api, it becomes punarapi. Punarapi jananam, taking birth once again, again taking birth. Punaha api maranam, again death. Punarapi janani jathare shayanam, lying in the mother's womb. This samsara, iha samsare, this samsara. Philosophically, samsara means terrestrial entanglement, any bondage, anything that binds you is known as samsara. In fact, colloquially, we use in spiritual parlance, even in normal parlance, is enna samsaram I have got into. Means it has become a headache. Whatever you have got into, anything, if it becomes a burden, if you're not able to sail through it effortlessly, they colloquially say it's a samsara. It's not getting into a relationship with samsara. Anything that binds you is known as samsara. This samsara, the bondage, as the verse is titled, is unending. Why? The cycle of birth and death is going on and on and on. You are completely oblivious. You are unaware what you've already gone through. May I request the verse to be there a little longer, Gayatri Ma? This samsara, yah samsare, bahudustare, bahudustare. Kripaya, Gayatri Ma, through thy grace, can we have the verse? Kripaya, see the moment I said Kripaya, it came. Kripaya pare, o murare. So it's a beautiful touch. This entanglement seems to be unending. I do not know how to get out of it. So it's a total helplessness a sadhak gets into, and that's when you get into this element of devotion. So when he says, "O Murare," Murare is a name, Lord Krishna, isn't it? Lord Krishna gets when he destroyed the demon Mura. That's another story. So it doesn't matter. It's just a contextual. But what's important is you surrender to a higher element, because intellect gets drained out beyond a point because it is entirely in the realm of ignorance. So there is a beautiful touch of devotion there. Thank you, Gayatri Ma. Now, this verse, as I've said, gives the consequences of not having followed what was prescribed in the 20th verse. The verse prescribes the three yogas, the three spiritual disciplines of elevating oneself through action, emotion, and thought, which is very little of the Gita. Drink a drop of the Ganges and worshipping Murari at least once. It's a symbolic reference to karma, bhakti, jnanam. So when one doesn't do what is enunciated in the 20th verse, such a person will be subjected to this seemingly vicious cycle of birth and death. Now, I know last week there was a question that was asked. I hope Totaji is there. Are you there, sir? Is he there? All right. If you can, again, through thy grace, appear today only. Everybody's grace only we are seeking. I think there was this question concerning how do we explain the phenomenon of death and rebirth, isn't it? There was that question. I said I will take it up because it's a concept which needs to be rationalized to come to a certain understanding, because these are things which can't be proven, which can't be tested. There's no practical element to it. Therefore, I remember saying, and you need to take a note, that here is a concept which is known as a theory, which presents the whole cycle of being reborn as theory of reincarnation. But this theory is indeed very logical. So I want to appeal to each of you to be very alert, because I'm trying to build a thought. Some of you may be familiar, but then there's something always new out there for us to attune to, and it strikes a chord. You never know when you get that little extra. Now, when you look at the world, all what we understand is that world is constantly subjected to change. Everything in world goes through the flux of change. And this change in the external world and the internal world, objective or subjective, everything is changing. This change is brought about because of the phenomenon of birth and death. So I'm saying the change happens in the world because of the phenomenon of birth and death. Now, when I say phenomenon of birth and death, in a simple course of our day's progression, for us, the night died, morning is born, is just over 5:30, 5:45 in the morning for us in India. The night had to die for the morning to be born. Then the early morning dies, noon born. Very soon the noon dies, evening is born, the evening dies, the night is born, the night dies, the day is born. So this cycle of birth and death continues the progression of the day, isn't it? So there is no birth without death, there is no death without birth. So birth and death are actually two sides of a coin. And this progression of the birth and death, the two aspects of a coin, defines the world, which subjects us through a constant flux of change. Isn't it? Now, this chain of birth and death seems to happen in all the kingdoms. What are the kingdoms we are living amidst? Is somebody's microphone on? Totaji, I'm answering your question, sir. Just explaining the concept of birth and death. Now I've come with little preparation. Don't ask me tough questions, huh? So, but I had to struggle to come with this little presentation. So I'll appreciate your cooperation. I thought you asked last week to explain the concept of birth, isn't it? Or rebirth. How do we come to
reincarnation?
How do we understand to a large extent rationally the concept of reincarnation, right? So I hope you heard me what I just said. The concept of world being a change, which is nothing but an expression of birth and death. All right, right. Come back to me after you hear the whole concept, and then we'll take up any clarifications. I'll open it up to the floor. All right.
Okay.
So the concept of birth and death, which is nothing but construction and destruction, is, as I've said, is happening in all the kingdoms. All kingdoms which we live, we are living amidst are the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and the human kingdom. So you look at all these kingdoms, there is this continuous rhythmic motion, a rhythmic cycle of construction, destruction, birth and death, which change continuously seems to be happening, isn't it? You plant a seed, suddenly there's a birth and there's a death of a tree. So there's a birth and death that's constantly happening. The vegetation is constantly thriving. Who takes care of it in the jungle? That lush tropical forest. Amazing how the whole ecosystem thrives because there's a constant system of birth and death going on. So this concept of birth and death is inevitable. So the cause and effect. So the principle of cause and effect. The principle of cause and effect means the law of causation. The law of causation, the principle of cause and effect, constantly seems to be projecting themselves endlessly in all these kingdoms. Isn't it? Are you all with me? No? There is this constant effect of cause and effect that seems to be going on. It could be day and night. It could be the various seasons. They seem to be functioning meticulously. Even the course of our life, from birth to childhood to youth to manhood to old age. So this cycle of birth and death, infancy dies, childhood born, childhood dies, youth born, youth dies, manhood born, man dies, old age born, old age dies, infancy born. There seems to be a cause and effect. I don't come to any conclusion. I'm just saying there seems to be a cycle which seems to be applying in all the kingdoms. Philosophically, what we are told, birth and death is nothing but a mere change of state and position. It's just a mere change. Birth and death is just moving from one experience to another. Like I left my home, I'm born at the Wisdom Center. So I'm dead there, I'm born here. It's a change of experience. It is movement from one experience to other. That's the death and birth, isn't it? So philosophically, when a person dies, and if he's born into another environment, it is just nothing but you're born into a different state. It is nothing but a different experience. It is just a movement from one experience to other. It becomes difficult because at death is a physical body that perishes, that disappears. But the principle of moving from experience to experience is exactly the same. Mark these words. Every bit of it will help you in creating a picture. Each of it is a puzzle, all what I'm saying. Birth and death is just moving from experience to experience, just like you're moving throughout your life from one experience to other. But we just can't understand what happens at death because the physical body disappears, it perishes. But the principle functioning, which is you're just entering another experience. Nothing terrible at death, nothing abominable at death. There's nothing wrong with death. In fact, philosophically speaking, the masters celebrate death. You know that? Spiritual men celebrate death and mourn birth. Mourn birth because it's again subjected to the cycle of bondage. And death is actually a liberation from bondage, isn't it? You're free to move on. We don't understand that. Certainly we don't understand. But not understanding this concept of that, some people believe, they're just throwing conjectures. Some people believe that death is the ultimatum. It is the end of their personality and there's nothing thereafter. Isn't it? Who are the people who believe that? RPG? There are certain strong beliefs. Any idea? Which religion?
Hari Om Guruji. I mean, I think several religions, but certainly I think you find that to some degree in Christianity and Islam. You find it in different places that it's the finality, right?
Yeah.
That there's an end point, call it whatever you want, heaven, hell, whatever it is, right? But that's it. You get one chance and you're done.
So they believe that death is the finality, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nothing continues. Yes, Islam believes, Christianity does. Some people believe that there is a continuity. Again, it's a belief. On what basis you say so? They don't have an argument, but they believe things go on. Others actually, as RPG also said partially, that they believe that after this death, there is no birth, but you go through a certain experience of a hell and heaven. You're transported into a certain experience. So they believe hell and heaven are geographical states and places where you experience it. So they believe you spend a certain time in those realms of experience. All these are various beliefs and systems. I don't think we are here to accept them irrationally. It will be irrational to accept it. But let's ask this fundamental question. The fundamental question is, what happens at death? So it's important we examine death. Now, at death, what's happening is, as I've said, the gross body obviously has perished. It's no more there in front of you. But Vanitama, let me ask you, if you were to bury the body, what happens to the elements that constitute the body? Would they disappear?
They essentially disintegrate.
Disintegrate.
And all that's left, the bones.
But would it disappear into nothing?
No, it kind of intermingles with the earth or the soil.
It just mixes. It just changes its form into something else, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't disappear into nothing, isn't it? So the gross body, the physical body, or the gross matter we call, it just changes its form into something else, isn't it? And this is supported by the two laws which science talks of. Science talks of the two laws, which is known as the law of indestructibility of matter and the law of conservation of energy. Don't ask me to explain these laws. I do not know. All I know is that's all I know. These two talk of it. So don't scrutinize me. I'm lost thereafter. Vanitama, I hope you know what they are. If you don't, figure it out. Unless there are other gurus or amongst us, they can guide. So these two laws, the law of indestructibility of matter and the law of, what's other law? I already forgot what is that. Vaitama, what is the second law?
What do we say?
The law of conservation of energy.
Energy.
It's interesting just to explore what these laws say. And the law only says that something cannot disappear into nothing. Whatever energy, whatever form, whatever character you have, it can't disappear. It can't become from something, it can't become zero. So as you said, the physical body, it doesn't disappear into nothing. It only changes its characteristics. It changes its nature. It's still there, but in some other form, it's there. All right. Now, what we all must try and look at is the same principle, the same law of indestructibility of matter and the conservation of energy applies to the subtle body as well. It applies to the rest of your personality. It applies to subtle body as well. Anand, now, do you know what the term subtle body means, Anand?
Hari Om, Guruji.
Yes.
No, I don't. I mean, I'm not sure what you're referring to. I mean, I know the body, I mean, as you said, body transforms when you die.
So the subtle body, Shilama, it is certainly not Atman. I'm glad I asked this question. The subtle body or the subtle matter. Okay, let me ask Reddy Garu. Reddy Garu, you know what subtle matter is? Bhayam vestundi kada, emo adutunnaru, podduna lepi, you wake us up and ask all these questions, and what am I got into? I know I can read your mind, sir, now.
No, we mentally prepared, Guruji.
No, see, that's why I also upfront I confess, this is all I know. I have only come little preparation. Don't ask me any difficult question. So you also can confess, then we are on the same platform, sir.
In the life, it's easy to ask questions, Guruji.
So,
subtle body, it could be a mind and intellect.
It is. In fact, the subtle body refers to that which is contained in the gross body, which is referring to your feelings and thoughts. And the causal body refers to the vasanas. It's worth taking a mental note, if possible, a physical note, Anand. Gross body is the physical body. Subtle body constitutes of mind and intellect, which is your feelings and thoughts. Causal body refers to the vasanas. I'm sure you're familiar. You've heard this word vasana?
Yes, Guruji.
Yeah, Reddy Garu, you are Brihaspati in this.
No, I'm just learning basics.
No, you are very familiar. I'm actually asking Anand. Anand, perfect. Reddy Garu, that mind and intellect is subtle body, but in fact, the subtle body and causal body together is known as subtle matter. So you can compartmentalize both as subtle matter. It's important because this is what we need to examine, what is happening to the subtle matter at depth. The gross matter is there in front of you, is perished, it's changed its form. That's done and dusted. We put that aside. Now, what we're saying is that the indestructibility of matter and the conservation of energy, the law applies even to subtle matter, which means the energy in the form of your desires and vasanas. These desires and vasanas are a very, very potent force. If I can ask Anand, I can bring you back Anand again. What is the power of thought? The Sanskrit word for that thought is sankalpa. You know what is the power of sankalpa?
Not sure, like what, I mean, it influences your environment. I mean, with your thought, you can influence yourself and the environment around you.
What does a thought do? Just influence the environment?
I mean, it changes your behavior, right? I mean, you influence, it changes your behavior, and then you have a cascading effect. It changes the environment that's around you.
In fact, you're right. It not only changes the environment, it changes your whole persona. It changes your entire personality. In fact, it defines you. It just defines you. And that, if you hold on to a thought, just examine. For example, a person could be living a life of ill health. Means he is just jolly good, free going, and he has led an indulgent life. But at some point, this thought of health comes into him, and it consumes him. It overwhelms his life. It hits him like an avalanche that I want to lead a life of health. That's it. What does it do? It changes the entire complexion of what he does, how he looks at life, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Mm. And not only does it change you, it influences everybody around you, isn't it? Instantly, the friend circle change, your activity changes, your life changes. Instead of taking a lift to your office in the third floor, you'll say, I want to take the steps up. Instead of taking the bike, I would want to take a bicycle. Instead of eating junk, I want to eat salad. Everything and starts reflecting in your outlook. You become agile, you become alert, it's all because the thought of health got into you. No, you knew it, but you did not understand the value of it. The moment you understand the thought, the power of thought, the power of sankalpa. So what I'm trying to say is these desires or vasanas are very powerful forces, aren't they? They drive you from experience to experience. They've been driving you. Other day, somebody wanted to see tulips. So they went all the way from South India to the tip of North India to see tulips. I could have gone to Netherlands also, but Netherlands is okay. I can go and see it in India only. Why do I go all the way to Netherlands? Netherlands, Amsterdam, am I right? You get these beautiful tulips. So now international travel not possible. I will travel within India, from South India to North India to see tulips. No, I'm not saying anything wrong with it. Just a thought comes. I see people here, and various thoughts come to my mind. That's all. So don't say again. That also power of thought. Association of thought. So the thought of seeing a tulip, what has it done? It has created a physical environment to experience something which I have not experienced. Just a thought. Now, what we are saying is there are innumerable desires, many, many vasanas, which are there right now in all of us, isn't it? Totaji, I want to bring you here. Let's say the next moment, there's a minor tremor in this part of the city where I am, and the roof above me collapses. Tathastu samapt. I end, the transmission ends. This is the end of my life. It's possible. Anything can happen anytime. Now, when this inevitable death happens, what happens to the many, many, many unfulfilled thoughts and desires and vasanas in me? Can they disappear into nothing?
I think they still stay with the body is gone, but your subtle
See,
image.
the body houses the subtle matter. The body is gone. It only changes its form or nature or characteristics. We've said it doesn't disappear into nothing. Now, what happens to the subtle matter? Does it disappear to nothing just because a death happens? It could be an accident, it could be a natural death, whatever be the cause. But at the point of death, do you agree that there are many, many desires and thoughts unfulfilled?
Yes.
What happens to all of them? We are only asking questions here. They don't have answers. There are certain unaccountable loss of energy in the form of desires at death, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm glad you're with me. So there are innumerable deaths happening. In fact, if you Google and find out how many people die every minute, we'll have a statistic. Sad. Perhaps due to COVID, we keep getting update. This many people have died, that many people have died. But globally, if you take how many people die every minute, countless people are dying. And countless people are being born every minute, aren't they? So there is an innumerable loss of energy in the form of desires at death. So at the moment of death, many desires are unfulfilled, and it will be irrational to presume that they would disappear to nothing. The same logic would apply. Various people, when they are born, each one is born with a unique characteristic, unique tendency, a unique nature, a unique vasana. You may have 2 children, but both of them are not the same. You may have 3 siblings, 4 siblings. None of them are the same. Why are they different? Each one has a distinct vasana, a distinct tendency, a distinct aptitude. So various people are born with this various unique pattern of thoughts, unique pattern of vasanas. It would also be irrational to presume that these thoughts and vasanas or these tendencies has come out of nothing. By doing so, are we not violating the code of science here? Are we not being irrational? So what is the cause of movement here? Anand, I can ask you this question again just to make sure you're following. What is the cause of movement?
Sorry, I was distracted. So I know you mentioned that with the subtle body, once it dies out.
I also know you were distracted. That's the reason I asked you.
But I recollect, if it's correct, you were asking, if the body, where does the subtle body go, and when the body expires, is it getting transformed?
No. What I'm asking is, what is it that causes movement?
I mean, in this case, death, right?
No harm.
No.
Just gather your thoughts. Let me get somebody else. My question is, what is it that causes movement? Rajiv ji, good to have you back after a while, sir. Namaskar. What is it that causes movement?
Yeah, death is the one which has initiated all this, as the body dies, the gross body dies, then the desires and other things need to go someplace, I guess.
So that which causes movement is
Death. That is the initiating point, after that in between some other things also may happen.
no, only when there is movement, there is a change that brings about death and birth. But my question is, what is it that causes the movement? All right, think along, sir, please. I know you're not far. You're answering your own way, but I just want to be more pointed. Arbiji, what is it that causes movement?
The unfulfilled desires. So we give up the current existence because it can no longer satisfy us. And that next iteration, the force or the momentum from those unsatisfied desires causes the generation of the next cycle.
No, I'm not even talking of rebirth, but you're right. Movement from one experience to other. Desire is the cause for movement, isn't it?
Yeah.
Desire is the energy in every experience. Is the desire that drives you into the experience.
Yeah.
Isn't it? So all what we are saying is, at death, there is certain unaccountable loss of this energy. Am I right? At birth also, there is an unaccountable gain of energy. No, the questions we got to ask is, what is happening to all the desires when a person dies? What is happening, or where is this person getting these tendencies or vasanas, unique tendencies is born with at birth? What is happening? Because going back to the law of indestructibility of matter and conservation of energy, the science presents that nothing can go, something cannot disappear into nothingness. So we are just trying to make sense of what's happening in this area of ignorance, because we do not know what happens at death through the concept of science. Now, this thought, this concept, the great thinkers of yore, the great thinkers, the Vedic masters, very carefully scrutinize this phenomenon. They scrutinize the phenomenon of the hordes of desires disappearing and appearing. Things seem to disappear and seem to appear. They examined it very, very carefully. And what they have done is they have brilliantly connected the unaccounted gain of desires at birth to the unaccountable loss of desires at death. They have just connected these two factors. In the famous usage of the term, they have just audited our accounts. Like an auditor, he brings all your accounts and he starts making sense of your transactions. They have just audited our accounts of life and brilliantly brought in the concept of a theory of reincarnation. So this ingenious correlation of cause and effect, the desire is the cause, effect is life. Desire, remember, go back to that equation. Desire is the cause, the effect of it is experience, is life. So they have only brought out these two factors, desires, loss of desires at death, gain of desires at birth. They've audited it and said it is just a continuity. It is just a movement from one experience to other. It is just a change of state. There's nothing terrible at death. Only thing we have left is the gross body. So what is actually happening is the same subtle matter, which is in me now, takes another form and continues the journey. That's about all. It's like, imagine I changed the engine in a car, in a vehicle. I remove the engine and I plant it into another body of a vehicle. The body has changed. The engine is the same. If you can relate to that. But it looks different, but performance is exactly the same. Imagine, Ushama, I put a Maruti 800 engine. You know Maruti 800, no? I'm asking, not knowing what is your knowledge of automobile. Sometimes you will be in for a pleasant surprise. Huh? So Maruti 800 engine, you take it and put it in a Mercedes. What will happen? What will be the performance?
It will not be as efficient as a Mercedes-Benz.
Why? It's a Mercedes-Benz, no?
But it has more power and more, I guess it has more power.
Appa, you are thinking along with me. I'm so comfortable now that you know that the Mercedes-Benz has more power than Maruti 800. But I have taken the engine from 800, put into, instead of the Benz engine, I put 800 engine. What is the performance?
It will be like a Maruti 800 engine.
Exactly like the 800. Now, what is the engine here related to?
It's related to the soul or the vasanas and desires.
Punishment.
It's related to the.
What is the engine now?
It's the causal body, Guruji.
The engine is the causal and subtle body, not soul. Please take the soul out of equation. If you have heard, if you go back to the recordings, till now, I have not uttered the word soul.
Correct.
So please don't bring that into the equation. It has nothing to do with the equation.
Okay, Guruji.
So the body of the car is 800 body is. Now we've got two bodies here.
Yeah.
One is the body of Maruti 800, other is the body of Mercedes-Benz.
Yeah.
What is the Maruti 800 body?
The one which has died. I mean, the body, the person who has died, or the physical body which has died.
The physical body which is dead, redundant, useless is Maruti 800. The Mercedes-Benz is the new body.
Yeah.
The engine that is taken from 800 and put into the Mercedes. Right. This is the death of the first and the birth of the later. And since you took the word of the soul, what is the soul in the equation of this vehicle? Okay, hold on. I know your knowledge of automobile is too good. I can't. Now let me bring Dr. Anant into the equation. I had to qualify that because if I say Anant, Anand Siddharaman will react.
Yes, sir.
Anand ji, what is the ये दोनों में soul कहाँ पे है? Where is the soul?
I just came here.
No. Don't tell me you came. You came 10 minutes ago. That is good enough to answer the question.
Okay. The soul. You said don't ask about the soul. You said you never said anything about the soul.
Now I am asking. Because the topic has been raised, I have taken it up. Otherwise, I don't get into certain topics. They all
the soul went
areas.
away from the Maruti body.
Ayyo.
The soul is always there.
Changeless.
The soul, where will the soul go? So what soul are we talking about?
Atma.
No. S-O-L-E or S-O-U-L? And the clarity venuvanga. Huh?
SOUL.
That also Vaintama is helping you. Enna idu?
That I know. You're talking, you won't be talking about SOLE.
Now, the soul, which is the common factor, sir, the soul doesn't die. The soul ever remains. Perhaps I'll come to it, I'll expand a little further. But just to complete on the analogy of the vehicle, the soul is see the soul or the Vaitama, you can answer. What is the soul here?
Is it the gas, the petrol?
The petrol, correct. That which enlivens the entire personality. Nothing can move without the gas. Or in the modern context, you can say it could be a battery, an electric car. There has to be something which gives that life or energy, which is independent of the body, which is independent of the engine. The petrol is the same in an ordinary vehicle. The petrol is the same in a Rolls Royce. Yeah, the performance is poles apart, but it's got not because of the petrol. Harishji will come and say, "Oh, Guruji, but I must say there is a difference between ordinary diesel and turbo diesel. I only put turbo diesel." Sir, please don't scrutinize little Vedanta I'm talking. Turbo diesel may be a little more performant, but still the same. There is no difference in Atman. Petrol may be variant. Now, what are we saying? I'm confused. I'm lost. Where are we?
Turbo diesel.
The turbo diesel is all after I got into automobile. So the Paradharma, we go into Paradharma, this is what will happen. What is Swadharma? Where are we? What were we talking? Siddharamanji wants to guide us. Yes, sir.
Hari Om Guruji. Soul is independent of body and engine. That's what you are referring.
No, you're still with the engine. What we were commenting earlier, you're right, sir. What we were commenting earlier is this audit of the loss of energy in the form of desires and death to the gain of desires and birth, which the masters have done. This ingenious correlation of cause and effect. Desire is the cause, effect is life. This correlation of cause and effect projects the theory of reincarnation. So if you follow the line of thought, the so-called theory of reincarnation is based on the three pillars of the indestructibility of matter, the conservation of energy, and the law of cause and effect, which is the law of causation. These three laws support the projection, an intelligent projection of connecting death to birth. So in effect, what is happening at death? The definition of death and birth is as simple as this. Harish, if you can just capture these words, which can be a definition, then perhaps we are very clear, we can understand this. The definition of death or birth is a transference of subtle and causal. The transference of subtle and causal from one gross body to another. The transference of subtle and causal from one gross body to another is the death of the first and the birth of the later. So when the subtle matter is taken out from one body and planted into another, it is the death of the first and the birth of the later. So this is all that's happening in the phenomenon of birth or death, nothing more. It is just a change of desires, which is changing the environment. Totagaru. All okay? Anything to clarify?
Yep, still struggling a little bit with the connection of death at the end of the death and the beginning of new life. And you said they're connected, but how do we know they're connected?
No. Where do they go? How are they accounted is something which baffles our intellect. It is impossible that your desires, your karmas, your consequence of your actions are transferred to your wife or your children. It doesn't happen. Let's say you have done a very noble deed and you've incurred some punya, merit, because you've done meritorious deeds. Great service you have rendered. The fruits of that unselfish work, you only will face the consequences. You will only be rewarded for those actions, not that your child gets that merit for an action which he or she hasn't done. It doesn't happen. Why are we talking of what happens at death? Isn't that the law governs your action to your effect meticulously through the course of this life? An action effect is that law doesn't work meticulously in one's own life?
It does when we're alive, but at death.
No. See, we are, as we have said, we are only projecting the principles, what the science talks about. We're bringing the laws of science into philosophy and we are intelligently projecting. There's no way I can prove it to you. Okay. There is no transference. There is no intermingling of these actions and effects. It is so purely individualistic. And how it is managed, how it is governed, how it is so meticulously overseen, I bow down to that power which seems to function. It's just mind-boggling. If you even just allow the thoughts to run wide, who is it who's governing all that? Even in the deepest of my minds, I do an action unconsciously. I only will face the consequence, nobody else. The most conscious to the most unconscious action, it is accounted for. Life is accounted and audited in the law which governs it, which is the law of causation. We are taking shelter of two other laws, which I again mentioned: indestructibility of matter, conservation of energy, and we are saying the same law carries forward because birth and death is nothing but a change of experiencer. There's nothing terrible at death. We don't have to worry what's happening at death. It's just that just because the physical body disappears, the laws which govern it doesn't change. It's the same law that governs through the course of my life. The same law governs me into my next environment as well. What has happened is I've just taken another body, I've moved to another environment. Principally, if we understand how this functions, then it comes to a certain comfort. Okay, I understand how it's all functioning. And thereafter, you got to surrender and say, it happens, seems to happen mysteriously. But I have to have faith that something which functions so meticulously through the course of my life also is carried forward. Because we are only saying there is no laws of it. The loss of energy doesn't happen. So that it only takes a manifestation in another form. Just imagine the engine, we've taken the example, the engine is taken a chunk and replanted elsewhere. That's all is happening. There is no memory of where and what. And also, please be very mindful if somebody comes and says, I know your past birth, I know your future. Don't ever sell yourself to such people, because they are just banking on your ignorance to encash you. It is impossible. I mark my words. It is impossible to know your past birth. It is impossible to know your future. Not difficult, impossible. So don't just be sold to anything that being marketed out there because they have an ulterior motive. But there's no way I can prove it to you, sir. Yes, please.
Thank you. But I have a follow-up question.
Please.
Desires and vasanas are the ones that propel you, into the next cycle, next birth. How did it get started? Why did I get started into this cycle? This vicious cycle, to me, it looks like. Where does it originate?
Now, this is one question which you cannot understand it. I can give all the answers, but your intellect cannot understand it. Because it's beyond your intellectual ability. I'm not talking is because of you. The most brilliant mind here can't understand, including me. And the only answer the Shastras have given to that is, you wake up to the state of realization, you'll understand how it all started. You got to recreate this entire stage in the dream. Imagine I am the dream guru. You are a dreamer as a student. There's a dream class going on. The only advantage is I am coming from the waking state into the dream to conduct this class for all of you. All of you in the dream. The whole visualization of this is happening in the dream. And you ask me this question, sir, I can understand, I can feel the agony of just being caught up in this samsara of this bondage of cycle of birth and death. Can you please tell me, I only know my father, I know my grandfather, I've heard of my great-grandfather, I've seen my pictures, in fact, I've seen pictures. So I know there's a family chain, but when did this all start? Who is my father's 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 first father? There has to be a cause and effect, as you said. Yes, it has to apply because there cannot be a son without a father, and that father cannot come without a father. So there has to be a cause. I see a tree, there has to be a seed. And that seed must have come from a tree. So seed, tree, there's a chain reaction. So would the seed come first or the tree come first? So who is the first father? Now, all this question is not happening in the waking state, it's happening in the dream. And you ask me this question in the dream. And as a guru in the dream who has a knowledge of who you are, what the waking state is, you're asking me, how did this all start, sir? My answer to you is, Totaji, please wake up. Just wake up from the slumber of your sleep. Just wake up. Sorry, sir, what are you saying? I want to know when this whole change started, and you come back to me and say, wake up. Yes, sir, please wake up. And the moment you wake up, there is an actual conversation between two people who have woken up, which is you and me. The rest of them are still asleep. Let them be in their sleep. We'll leave them for a while. The moment you have got up, there's an actual transaction between two people in the waking state. And the moment you wake up, what do you say? Oh my God, the entire thing, the entire dream, the entire chain of the cycle which I've been caught up in is nothing but a mere figment of my imagination. It was just an imaginary dream, thinking it was real. I was caught up in it, not realizing that which is beyond it. Thank you, sir, for waking me up. And rehearse this concept in the waking state. When you wake up to the reality, you will understand the entire cycle which we are caught up in is nothing but like a dream. Mark the word like. It is not as a dream, it is like a dream. The laws exactly apply the same way. The phenomenon, what happening in the dream is exactly happening to us now. They say, just wake up. And all a sincere attempt to gain this wisdom is to wake up to that awareness of the reality. The moment you wake up, instantly we are liberated from the world. Another word for the world is known as, Totaji, you know? I'm sure you've heard of it from many spiritual gurus and many spiritual satsangs. Another word for the world is just another word for the word for the world. Any idea? All right.
Prapancham. Not equal.
Now, prapancham is a synonym. Yes, Seduramanji. Another word for the world. Yes, sir. Chappan Seduraman garu.
A world is unreal, illusory, it is Maya.
The world is correct. It is what Setuji said. Yes, Dr. Anand.
Maya.
Yes. What is that?
Everything is an illusion. That's what you just said.
Don't put the ball back in my court. Huh? Very smartly. Your turn to hit the shuttle. No, don't do not now. My turn. Oh, you got to be very careful. Huh? But do you have any idea what does the word Maya mean?
See, this is what my wife always keeps saying. Everything is Maya and illusion, and I'm not able to understand what she's saying.
What it means is don't take what she says as real. Simply say you are Maya. When she comes back to you, you just tell her, you are Maya, ma. You are Maya. You are not real. So all her complaints and arguments also are Maya. Correct, Amaitama? Huh? So the word Maya literally means not that. Maya literally means not that. So the world, what you think it is not what it is. It is something other than that. It's a mere illusion. It's an optical illusion. You are seeing something which is not. And you will understand what you're caught up in only when you come out of it. When you're conditioned to this state, you don't understand the influence of conditioning. So that's why I said we will not understand. Whenever this question comes, it becomes rather very difficult to convince or even communicate that experience what these masters are talking about. The only way you know the entire origin of the dream is to wake up. So if you ask me, how did it all start? When did this first thought or desire crop up? Again, there are many theories of Adam and Eve, and all these are theories now. You can't prove theories. But Vedanta has a logical answer to us. It gives us the path to that unknown truth. Please ponder over it. Please think over it. Okay. To begin with, Hariji, I know you want to say something, please, sir. And after that, Harishi, please, okay?
Even science has not answered, our modern science, when we consider a twin, one baby behaves in one way and the other baby behaves for the same parents. Is only Vedanta has given an answer to it. The modern science is not given any answer. Even it has not gone near to the answer. Only Vedanta has given the answer.
It's just too profound. Absolutely right. You can have twins and yet have contrasting natures. It's just, we don't understand the grandeur of what we are dealing with. It's too subtle, too grand. Right, absolutely right. Harishji?
Guruji, it's what I wanted to say, a lot of it I had typed out, but then you have gone far beyond and far richer and far deeper in terms of philosophical content. But I will just try and put a few words on what is the scientific background to the same question, because we started with laws of science.
Yes.
Now, the first law that we referred to is the law of conservation of matter, which, or the indestructibility of matter. Indestructibility of matter says that when there is a change, any change, and death is a change, which we will come to later. When there's any change, the total mass in the system remains constant. The second law is the law of conservation of energy, which says that in any system, the total energy remains constant. It only manifests in different forms. So it could be static or potential energy, it could become kinetic energy, it could become chemical energy, it could become some other energy. But the total energy remains the same. Now, where is the connection between these two? The connection between these two was drawn by Einstein in his theory of relativity, or in what is known as the general theory, where we talk of the mass energy balance. So when there is, he said, mass and energy are interchangeable. So here you have two things which are changing, and these two are interchangeable, and the total is the same. So it is just that one transforms to the other, right? And the reason why this confusion comes is that in science, we have something called hypothesis. When hypothesis is validated by logic, it becomes a theory. When hypothesis is validated by experiment, it becomes a law. Just this is the exact reason why Einstein's theory is known as the general theory of relativity. It is not called the general law of relativity. You cannot validate it with an experiment. It is only validated by logic. Similarly, the theory of reincarnation is not a law of reincarnation. The cause and effect is a law. But reincarnation is only validated by logic. And I think this is the fine difference which explains to some extent, in my limited understanding, what Totaji was referring to. It's the difference between hypothesis, theory, and law. At the end of the day, when you have laws, sometimes the dots are connected by hypothesis, which leads to theory, which may in the future, if we are able to, lead to a law. If we are able to, but then it seems very inconceivable how I, after dying, could conduct an experiment.
I'm glad you said all that you said, because that gives a clear picture in scientific terms as to how all these certain terms we use and how they all fit in. You know, it all certainly fits in. I knew it fits in, and I knew some help will come, and this is the help we all got. I got, certainly. So it helps scientifically how it all falls in its place. But you got to make a rational sense of it and then let it sink in. You know, as you said, nothing can be proven. Okay. Now, one last comment before I leave you all with a question. One last comment I want to answer. Padmini is asking, does this transfer of energy take place immediately at death, or does it take time, or it happens later? If it happens later, then where do these all unfulfilled vasanas exist and in which form? See, the two questions you're asking, does that energy transfer immediately or later? There is no proven thing again, which says whether it happens immediately or not. It's just like when you throw a seed, does it sprout immediately or does it take time to sprout? Again, there are certain seeds which sprout. You plant a seed, very soon you see a small shoot coming out. Sometimes you plant a seed, it takes 1 month for it to start showing up. So if a seed here is akin to a desire or an unfulfilled vasana, it may find a time to find a conducive environment, or it could be immediate. Both is a possibility. Now, if we say that it's taking a time for manifestation, where do the vasanas exist, in which form? I am asking you a question. You may not have an answer. Think about it. When you go to sleep tonight and you wake up tomorrow morning, there's a 7 hours gap. I ask you, what happens to your vasanas when you go to sleep? I ask you now, in which form are your vasanas? Exactly the same answer is to that question. If you have an answer, let me know. I will take a serious note of it. But we don't have an answer. There seems to be somewhere. Exactly the same principle applies to that as it applies to a little longer sleep. If at all you sleep between death and birth, you go through a long lull, as they say, is exactly the same experience we go through day in and day out. But what happens? I do not know. But when I sleep, the person I was, I'm the same person when I wake up. Exactly the same way. When a person dies and when he's reborn, it's the same embodiment, but it's a different form, a different expression. It's the same individual, different environment, that's all. It's like I sleep, I board the flight in Hyderabad. I'm taking a direct flight to, let's say, Tokyo. I sleep here, and when I wake up, I land in Tokyo. The same person, but a totally different environment. Tokyo is birth 2. Departure from Hyderabad is birth 1. I'm dead here, I'm born there. 8 hours I slept. Suddenly I'm in a different world, different culture, different environment, different embodiment. It brings a different side of me. I'm same person, a different expression. A lot to think. A little more I want you all to think and come back with answers. The question I'm asking is, when a person dies, what are the things that are carried forward along with him or her from birth 1 to birth 2? What are the things that are carried forward from B1 to B2, birth 1 to birth 2? Arpitji, the question clear? Can you repeat for us, please?
When someone dies, what carries forward from this birth, B1, to the next birth, B2?
Yes. What are the things that are carried forward from birth 1 to birth 2? We will start the next class with these questions. Now, if there are any comments which I've missed, please forgive. Take a note of it. We'll come back again and we shall answer. All right? We'll continue. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Hari Om.